Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Disrupt Your Now with me, your host, Lisa Kipps-Brown. Sorry, I got my bracelet snagged on my shirt. And my co-host, Rachel Garrett Mercer. And today is the day after my birthday. And I'm just going to announce publicly I turned 60 years old yesterday, and I don't care who knows it. So
you should be proud of that number.
and I'm one of these people, I celebrate age, and the people that whine about how old they are, I'm like, okay, I want to know which years you're willing to give up in order to be younger, because every one of those years have experiences and everything that make us who we are. Yes, so I'm just going to announce that to the world. I'm 60 and 1 day today.
Congratulations. That's a big
deal. So y'all, tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than having a guest on, we're going to talk about kind of the outline of my new book that'll be coming out this summer. Some of you already know the name of it is Disrupt Your Now, the Successful Entrepreneur's Guide to Reimagining Your Business and Life. And Rachel knows about it, but she doesn't really know the outline of the book and how I'm setting it up. Yeah. And she's in the book and doesn't know that yet. So I'm going to talk with y'all about kind of the big overall view of the book, and so that y'all can be getting excited about it. And you can use what we're talking about to be starting to think about how you can reimagine your own business. So,
yes.
So the reason I wrote this book, for those of y'all that don't know, the reason I wrote it is there are so many of us who start businesses, and when we start them, we're like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be doing what I love with people I love to work with. I'm going to be totally in charge of my life. I'm going to be my own boss. And all of a sudden we look around one day and we're like, oh my God, I have like 50 bosses, between employees and clients and whatever. And I'm working way too much, and I'm not making enough money, and I can never get away. Or if I am, a lot of people are making a lot of money, but they still feel really miserable.
Yeah.
They feel trapped because they haven't built their business for themselves.
Yes.
They looked around and been like, oh, this is what everybody else is doing, so this must be what I need to do.
Exactly.
So that's why I wrote the book, Rachel.
Yeah, I love it. You're spot on. Everything you've said and everything we've talked about, you're spot on.
Well, and the thing is, after I started my business in 96, and for many, many years, I loved it. I was like, it was just freedom to me because I did what I wanted, when I wanted, only worked with clients that I liked. And then, as you know, when my mother got sick and I started making some decisions that were not the best decisions for me, and I looked around and I'm like, okay, I'm more broke than I've ever been. And not just because I was taking care of her, it was because of the poor decisions I made. I'm more broke than I have ever been. We are doing work that I never wanted to do. The things that made us unique, we didn't have anymore because all of a sudden, we were like the other businesses that were out there. So after, and this was like 18 years. I had literally owned the business for like 18 years then.
Wow.
So I'm like, this is really stupid.
Yeah.
So this book came out of that.
Yeah.
So the 5 steps, Rachel, that I have, I've broken it finally after all these months of thinking. I've broken it down, what I've done, into 5 steps.
Okay.
So very succinctly in a couple of words each, the first section is you. It's all about you, what you want, what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, your mindset, your self-confidence, all that. It's everything internal.
Okay. And is this like a guided tell me through talk me through, and not to give away any secrets, but
that's fine.
A little bit of how that works in your book. Are you guiding us through creating our own process out of that? Or is it really just doing that inner work and that inner dialogue? How did you present it for everybody?
Okay. So I'm one of these people, I do not like a set process. Everybody's different.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. A couple months ago, I read a book. It was a great book. Really, really good book, until I got to this part where he said, this is what I did, and if you just do what I did, everything will be wonderful.
Yep.
Well, hello, I'm old enough to know better. I'm old enough that I should have just skipped through that part and been like, that's hogwash. I'm going to do my own thing. But I decided, okay, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about like getting up 2 hours earlier and doing this and doing that. Rachel, you know I'm not a morning person.
No. Well, when you start down that road, I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit. It's like you start to feel like a failure because you're not succeeding how somebody else succeeded. It's like you start to get the trap of like, I suck, I failed at this, like that kind of thing. Yes.
So that Sunday night, I go to bed and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be like a normal person. And my brain totally revolted. I couldn't sleep. Not only did I not get up early the next morning, I got up later. For about a week, I was literally in like a spiral.
Yeah.
Because I tried to make my brain and my body act like other people. And, you know, okay, first of all, that's stupid. But secondly, I started my business so I didn't have to live like that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, so anyway, no, the book is not a process, because that's one of the main things that I want to get across to people is it's your business and you can make it anything you want. You can do whatever you want as long as you can make the money that you need to make or want to make. So the first part is you.
Okay.
It's internal. The second part we're taking out in a little bit bigger circle. It's like your network and who is around you. And, you know, there's that saying that something to the effect of, I'm sure I don't have it right, something to the effect of you are the 5 people who surround you.
Yes.
Because if you're not, and not just through work, but if you're not surrounding yourself with people who are challenging you and pushing you, then you get stale and you stop growing, you stop learning. So it's about that, making connections, growing, finding mentors. The third section is learning to think creatively. And you are great at that, Rachel. But it's learning to think creatively, think differently, think bigger. So we're going out a little bit more to ideas. Then the next one is actually acting and doing.
Okay.
Do something, you know, quit thinking about it and actually do something. And then last is close to my heart is make it be about more than business. Because, you know, we all see stories in the news constantly of millionaires and billionaires. They have all the money in the world and they're still not happy. Right. So at the end of the day, it needs to be about more than money. If you can find a higher purpose, and I don't mean that like a lot of people think that sounds all mushy gushy, like religion or whatever, but whatever is important to you.
Yes. Well, and I agree with that too. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I just that piece of it, like right there is like the nugget that like, I mean, all of it's, you know, useful and wonderful. And like, if you've never actually taken the time to think about these things, like, I think sometimes we can pull out a piece of your like of the 5 things, right? So like, maybe it is, you want to make an impact, but do you have the other things in like set up in your brain? Like, do you have all these other things figured out?
Yeah.
I feel like when you have all those 5 pieces together, not only is your business on track to be rock solid, like you as a person are on track to feel solid in yourself and your beliefs and like what you're actually creating. I think that's a really powerful thing as well, you know?
And that's exactly how I feel. You know, it goes back to no matter how much money you have, there's always somebody with more.
Yes.
But in order to know what you want to do, that's a higher purpose, or to be able to do it, you have to have the other pieces in place. And that's why I make it last, because in the beginning, you know, I talk about what's important to you, figuring out what's important to you. But the way I have it set up, y'all, is I've got over 40 entrepreneurs in this book.
So exciting.
They range from world-known people like Steve Sims, the author of Blue Fishing, and Jeffrey Madoff, founder of Madoff Productions, who y'all may have heard of a few of his clients like Ralph Lauren and Victoria's Secret and Tiffany and Company, you know, just little micro businesses. But so, you know, from world-known people like that to Rachel, who just started her business last year, and not to discount you, Rachel,
No,
but
it's a very different, it's absolutely different.
So, I have that range of world-known experts to people who've been in business for decades, but nobody knows them, to new entrepreneurs like you and another young woman who started her business during COVID, to one of my friends who spent 15 years in prison for armed robbery. So I have somebody that anybody can relate to. Race, age, gender, everything, background, education. But instead of focusing on each person, like having a whole chapter about each person, I have the book broken down in those 5 main sections I told you about.
Yes.
Then chapters within them, and then within each chapter are short stories that are basically lessons to learn from each person.
I think that's not that this was your intention in doing this, but in the group of people that you've collected and just gotten to know, I think that, we talk about this in media, and I obviously, come from theater, come from all of those kinds of things and in the arts, but representation and seeing yourself in something like that is also a really big thing. And so I love that you wove it throughout, and it's not just, I don't know, it's not just here are the successful, billionaires that have been doing this forever, but you kind of got down in the nitty-gritty of everybody's I don't know, not everybody's, but like you're saying, different people that have been on this journey differently. I think that's an interesting way for people to see the broader picture for themselves. But I don't know, I at least for me, I like seeing different perspectives. I'm very much that kind of person. I'm very that's how my brain works, is just seeing different perspectives. And so I did all that, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Why it's fun just talking to people, because there's so many different nuggets and ideas that may not resonate with us. Like that book that you read, obviously that was not the piece to resonate with you.
Yeah, the book was great. I should have just skipped over that part. And that's the thing though with people, a lot of times we will hear great stories or read great stories, and it's awesome. But then we go, yeah, but that's easy for them to do.
Yes.
I could never do that. And that's why I really wanted to have a variety of people. But it's so funny because, Rachel, this book has been a journey for me, because initially I was going to have 10 to 12 successful entrepreneurs, and I was going to feature each one and basically kind of have a chapter. And then I thought, that's boring. Yeah. And I was just I don't want it to be autobiographical. And then I kept adding people, and then I would meet new people. And I'm like, hey, you want to be in the book? All of a sudden, I've gone from this little cocktail party to a huge room full of people.
Yes.
So the book, it's really interesting to me, and I don't mean this egotistically, but I have a friend who is a New York Times bestselling author, and she writes novels, historical fiction. And she used to say, the characters write themselves and the books write themselves. And I'm not putting myself on par with her at all. So I don't want anybody to think I am. It's not like I'm a wonderful writer. But it really was interesting to me how the book ended up writing itself and telling me what I needed to do. And I'm actually kind of still adapting it. I even had it on somebody else in the past week, Rachel.
Well, I feel too, it just kind of comes out of you too, right? You're in these conversations so much. I know you, and I know these kinds of conversations that you're actively pursuing, or you're just kind of put in the room with these really interesting people. So I feel it would be hard to lock your book and be no, this is it. When you're it's how do you stop?
I'm hello, no, I gotta keep putting it. But you know what? That's one thing that I'm really excited about, because the book is going to be able to be kind of a living document, because I'm going to keep adding on to it on the website. I'm going to keep telling people stories and adding on new people, because I just think it's really important that we all learn from each other instead of feeling like we have to listen to the powers that be.
Yes. I am just even hearing you say sharing stories and we all talk about that, but storytelling is such a thing that I just believe in so wholeheartedly, because you can write something and it can be dry and it's just okay, cool, thank you for the information. You could just write out 5 steps and be this is how you do it, whatever it is, but it's more colorful, it's more interesting. Those are the things that are the things that live on. You know what I mean? Like the things that people actually remember.
Yeah.
Remind me, this is your second book or your
Oh, this is my third book, actually.
book? Okay.
The first book was a technical book. Back in the 90s, and
Yes.
it was in the marine industry. It was a technical book, all kinds of specs and line drawings and stuff. So kind of second book because, like out of my brain stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last one I wrote, I think it was 2017, Boomer Cash Out. Yeah.
Does the process feel so different coming from that? Like, are you finding yourself like having to get out of not your mindset with that, but how different has just like the process in general been for you, like shifting gears?
Hugely different.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, well, the first book I wrote, or the last one, Boomer Cash Out, I basically was like, I'm so tired of clients not listening, especially older people. They're like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do. I've done it like this forever.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? If I put it in a book, maybe they will listen because they'll think it's more important. So I basically just sat down one weekend, and in my head, I had a client in front of me, and I was in my head, this is what you need to understand of why you need to be learning to think differently. And I literally wrote the book in a weekend. It was so easy. I'm like, oh my God, this is just so easy. I used to write books all the time.
I'm a writer, yeah.
Well, this book, when I first was like, oh, I'm going to interview these people, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be even easier because all I have to do is interview people, and it's like the book is going to write itself, and I'm just going to, trip into the next thing. No, it has been way harder for me because I'm used to being a loner, the Lone Ranger, number one.
Yep.
So, but I also started having terrible imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God. Okay. Number one, I'm writing it with my cousin Buddy, Charles Kipps, who has won an Emmy and has gold records and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh God, what if Charles Buddy hates what I'm doing? And then I've got people like Steve and Jeffrey, and they have books and, famous clients. And I'm like, oh, what if they think it sucks? And then so I really was just like, oh my God. And I froze, Rachel. I just froze. So I had hours and hours and hours of video, but I was just frozen, and I couldn't figure out, like, I knew by then I didn't want it to be like featured people.
Right.
I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I really didn't know. So I'll tell you how I came about. It's not rocket science. The way I came about what I did is I was like, fine, I just have to sit down, start listening to these videos, and start taking notes. So I started re-listening, taking notes, and then I started going through them and picking out like blurbs that I thought were really interesting.
Okay.
Put them in a bullet list. I didn't even care who said it.
Yeah.
Put it in a bullet list. And then I started grouping them by kind of like big picture things.
Okay.
And so that's how it ended up evolving. It's not like I said, I'm going to have these 5 sections.
Sure.
I just started grouping things like big picture. And then I went down into chapters smaller. And then kind of at the end, I was like, oh, this is like you, little bit out, and I didn't even realize I was doing that.
Yes.
So
one of the most rewarding things I feel like when you're writing or in the creative process, like you just kind of accidentally stumble into what's just meant to be, like it writes itself. It just like comes out of you in some way. And you're like, wait a minute, and you get that big idea or whatever it is.
But I'm so excited about it because there's so many people's stories that I'm able to weave in, and they're not long. I mean, some are 3 or 4 paragraphs, and others might be a page or 2, depending on the detail that needs to be shared. But the other thing I love about it is that anybody who's reading it can literally just pick it up and open up to a page and read something. It's not something that they have to read from beginning or to end or in order. They could just pick it up and open it and read a short story about an entrepreneur, and they can get a lesson from it. So at the end of each story, I have a lesson, like the main takeaway for that story.
That's incredible. And I love that you wrote it that way, because people that are into personal development or carving out that time in their day or things like that, you're not always going to want to read like a whole chapter or a whole thing. So I'm personally a fan of, books and things like that do that kind of stuff. So that's a selfish thing on my part, is like, I love that you did that. So,
well, and I'm the type of person, I love to read. I read a lot, but as I've gotten older, and I don't think it's an age thing, I think it's more because I'm juggling so many things. But if I read something and I put it down, a lot of times I have to go back and remember what I read. I have to refresh myself if it's been like a week or two. And I didn't want people to have to feel pressured like that. I wanted it to be something that they felt really helped them instead of pressured them. So in the first part, I'm going to pull. Oh no, I lost Rachel. Oh no. Hopefully she'll be back. Rachel. I'm going to pull up my notes, y'all, and so that I can. Sorry, I'm distracted looking to see if she comes back. I'm going to pull up my notes so that I can tell you. Here she is. Hey, girl, what happened?
Sorry, you're telling me something and it just kicked me out.
I was like, oh my God, is it me?
No, it was me. Sorry, I'm back. Okay.
Oh no, that's okay. I was really worried because y'all don't know this, but before the show, I was having technical problems. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, Rachel's getting him.
Just like, kick me out. We're good.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm pulling up a draft that I have.
Okay.
So that we can kind of talk about some of the topics in it.
Okay.
And we're not going to go through it in depth, but I want you, since you have a new business, it's not quite a year old, right?
Not yet, a couple months away, but yeah, not quite yet.
Yeah. So, but I have to say, I'm so impressed with your business. You have done such a great job at like finding your niche, but you're still growing and you're going to constantly grow. So some of these things that we talk about, well, first of all, it's your business and you can make it anything you want. So, I've talked about that before, but I have people go through and try to go back in time and remember, why did I start my business? What were my dreams? What did I imagine I would feel like? What kind of work
right now? Like, I mean, truly, like, I'm like, what, 10 months into this, and I'm feeling like that right now. Not that I've like forgotten that, but I think I've gotten so busy, which is a blessing. It's such a blessing to be busy, but at the same time, just like reminding myself, because it can feel a little overwhelming. Not even overwhelming. I don't even know if that's the word, but it just can feel not stagnant, maybe like just a little bit, where I'm like pushing forward and I have great things in the pipeline and those kinds of things, but it's kind of honing in on the things that I really want to work on and not just the things that I can work on. Like that's
right. And that's one of the hardest things, especially if you're in a service business.
Yes.
But really any business. One of the hardest things is saying no to things.
Yeah.
You end up going, oh, I need the cash flow, or this is a great opportunity. And who knows what doors it might open. And what we don't think about is, but what doors is it closing because I'm using this isn't the thing that I love to do, or that's not my best, highest performing, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I want people to go back and remind themselves why they started a business, what their dreams were, what did they think they were going to feel like, just that whole, because when we start, when we're like, oh my God, and it's like, you imagine, even if you don't really know what you're going to be doing, you kind of imagine what you're going to feel like.
Yes.
And so
I think that was one of the biggest things that like drove me to like actually start my business, even in like the midst of, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to just do it. That kind of thing. It was, at the end of the day, I want to feel like X. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. And even if you don't know what you want to be doing, but like in your mind, do you feel like you're doing something, or do you feel like you're thinking more? Like for me, I've learned over the years, I love the thinking part. I like the doing part. I like the development, because sometimes I just want to go in a cave and not have to talk to people. But the thing that I really, really love is the thinking and the strategy. And I had let myself get away from that.
Yeah.
So another thing that I talk about, well, mindset and believing in yourself. And so, for example, my father was blind and he mowed the grass.
Yeah.
People would be like, how can a blind man mow the grass? He mowed it barefoot because his sense of touch was so developed, so he could tell which grass was cut and which wasn't.
It's
And
amazing.
so I'm like, look, if a blind man can mow the grass, you can figure out a way to do this.
Yes.
So trying to get people to feel more self-confident and to stop thinking of themselves in this box, try to let go of some of the limits that we put on ourselves. And actually, I have coincidentally 2 guys in the book who are blind. Hobie Wedler, who
Yes.
is Hobie, yeah. He is so awesome. And then Aaron Golub. Was Aaron on the show with you, or was it just with me?
Gosh, I can't remember. Right? Oh.
He's the one that was the first Division I football player.
We talked to Aaron. Yes.
Yeah, I thought he was on the show with you. So, those are people that most people, if they've not been around somebody who's vision impaired, they'd be like, oh, they could never, you could never play Division I football in NCAA. You could never be an NFL free agent. Or with Hobie, oh, you can't be a chemistry professor. You can't own your own business and work with Francis Ford Coppola. So a lot of it is mindset.
Right.
So lessons from people who had hurdles to overcome and how we can learn from them. And then, so the next part, and I'm not going through all of it, but the next part is about the, part of that, in that first part about you, this is huge, from my friend Richard Mulholland in South Africa, the missing link guy, presentation powerhouse. What is your victory condition?
Ooh.
Most of us don't even know, Rachel.
I don't know that I've ever thought about it like
that way. And he says he is a huge board game lover. He loves board games. He goes, but you know what? If with a board game, you know who wins. You know when it's over. And business isn't like that. And so he said, we just grow and grow and grow and grow. But then, as the way he put it, he's like, but that's cancer and that's shit.
Oh,
that's a great point. So his point is we have to know our victory condition so that we can know when we're there. And instead of just keeping on growing for the sake of growing. Another thing that I thought was really interesting that he said about the board games was that he now uses them as his canary in the gold mine. Because he loves them so much, he had been playing them like 5 to 6 days a week. He was bored in his business. He'd owned it for almost 30 years. The business is very successful, so it wasn't a challenge anymore. And then when COVID hit, and all of a sudden it's crunch time, but they came up with an awesome idea. His business is growing faster than ever. And he realized, I'm not playing board games anymore. And he said it's because his brain is already in what he calls solve mode.
Sure. Yeah.
So because before he didn't have a solve mode in business anymore. So he sought out the games. And now he told me the games will be his canary in the gold mine.
To do it.
Himself playing games more and more, that's a way that he'll be able to gauge that he is becoming bored or complacent.
That's incredibly self-aware. Like that
isn't it?
Yes.
Something else cool that Richard does. He has so many good stories. He has a new day resolution. He does not do New Year's resolutions. Every day he has a new day resolution. Okay. At the end of the day, all he does is give himself the victory sign or the smiling poop sign. Smiling poop if he didn't do it, and victory sign if he did. And the thing that I love about that is having a resolution that you want to reach every day is so much more positive than a to-do list.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Having the smiling poop is still kind of positive because you're like, well, I didn't get it done, but the poop is smiling at me, so I can still keep. I just thought it was really cool.
That's amazing. Well, it's kind of one of those like whatever works. You know what I mean? Like whatever will get your brain,
Yeah.
get your mind in the right place. Like if the smiling poop is the thing that's gonna like get you to the next day, like that's amazing.
Yeah, and the thing is, some people might be like, that is just so stupid, it would never work for me. But I thought it was so cool. And aside from that, I think the New Day resolution is awesome because you can come up with one little thing every day, you know, and it could even be something not to do. So it's very hard to put a don't do on a to-do list, you know?
Yes.
So like it might be don't balance the checkbook, have somebody else do, you know, don't do these things that you should be delegating.
It's like getting yourself sorted, you know what I mean? Like figuring out, like, I mean, and that's just part of entrepreneurship, you know, is figuring out like strengths, weaknesses, things that you love, things that you hate, things that you're willing to hire out for, things that you're willing to be a solopreneur about, you know, all of that kind of stuff is it's just a growing period and you just kind of figure it out as you go.
It is, and it's self-discovery.
Yes.
But most of us, it might start out as self-discovery, but we end up imitating everybody else because we're either afraid we'll be left behind or we'll miss some business or something. And so in general, most people, the longer their business goes, the more it turns into everybody else's business.
Yeah.
And then you have a job.
Right.
We don't want to
I'm going to throw a question at you, and I know we talk about this, but how are you measuring your like fun and like difference nowadays? Like, how are you measuring how you're different and like keeping that exciting for yourself?
Yeah, well, I don't have like a very specific thing right now. Mine is just more, what do I feel like when I get out of the bed? Am I looking forward to it? I'll be honest, for a couple of months when I really was just feeling total imposter syndrome with the book, I was really struggling. I didn't want to get up and I dreaded everything because I knew I needed to be doing this thing that I wasn't making progress in. But now that I'm making progress and I figured out what I was going to do and making more progress on that, it's helped me in everything because it's helped me clarify everything else about my business, Rachel.
I bet. Yeah.
So it really is. I had done kind of this outline for myself the other year, but not this
like detailed.
But this is helping me revisit it. And it's helping me look at things all over again, things that I did keep doing that I'm like, okay, I got rid of a lot of services before. But now I'm like, why did I even keep these? I need to just strip away everything that I don't want to be doing or that I don't want my staff to be doing and only do the things that we really, really love doing and are great at. Those are the things that we're going to be able to be the best at and stand out in.
And Lisa, you're 60. You deserve to decide.
Hello. If I don't deserve to be happy at 60, I never did, do I?
That's right.
So the next part, like I said, it goes from you inside to external.
Right.
And so that's more about connecting with the right people.
Yeah. Okay.
Rachel, I've been in business 20 years before I had a coach.
Wow.
Stupid. Yeah. You know what? When I first, and I'm not a golf player, but decades ago when I first met Tom and he wanted me to learn to play golf, the first thing I did was get a golf instructor.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yes. That is the big, yes. Like, or people will suggest getting a coach, but it's like, do I really want to designate like time to that? Like I need money. Like I don't need it. Yeah.
And the thing is, partly because I had owned the 3 other businesses before I started this business, and I had a degree in accounting, and I've been a CPA and all this. I'm like, I don't need a coach because I was thinking more of the business concepts. That's not what a coach is really for, unless it's somebody who really knows nothing about business. A coach is really more about you and helping you be your best and figure out what's important. And I'm like, even Tiger Woods has a coach, you know?
Yeah.
So why would we think we don't need one? But aside from coaches, even if people don't have a coach, a mastermind group, or just a network. And the main thing is that it's very important to have people who continue to push you.
Yes.
And make you strive to be better.
Absolutely. I agree with that, because you can only surround yourself with people at your same level doing the same thing for so long.
Yeah.
Because either you kind of adapt or you become just one of the, fish in the sea that's just like you're saying, doing the things, and everybody's business looks the same because they're all feeding into the same, pipeline and that kind of thing too. I think it's incredibly important.
And you need people who will challenge you. So why are you doing this? Or challenge you to think differently. Just like if we're working out, you have to keep using heavier weights in order for your muscles to keep growing.
And I think passing that back too, not to get off on like a totally different thing, but as you're doing that, you find a coach, somebody pours into you, but then one of my whys is then pouring into somebody else.
Exactly.
Like other people lifting them up in different ways.
Yes. And so I don't mean ditching the people. Yeah. I don't mean that at all, but you constantly have to keep growing and challenging yourself. And then, give back, help other people, bring them up with you. And then you all keep going up the rungs of the ladder.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that's a very important point. So let me see. Let's see. One of the things I was going to say about networking and connecting, a buddy, Charles, my cousin that's working on the book with me, he made a comment to me one time. Now, mind you, he started out as a local newspaper reporter. Then he went to becoming a songwriter and producer. And the first song that he got a contract for was Grammy nominated. Okay. Then he moved into screenwriting and producing and writing books, New York Times bestsellers. He told me the best decision I ever made for his entire career, the best decision I ever made was to go to a laines. And laines was just a restaurant in New York City, but it's a famous restaurant that like everybody in the literati group goes to. Yeah. And the lady who owned it, her name was Elaine. Okay. And so when he knew that he was ready to move from music into like screenwriting and stuff, he knew he had to have something to bridge that. And he knew Elaine's was the place to go, but he didn't know anybody there. Even though he was famous in the music world, this is like a different world.
Totally different, yeah.
And not famous to people like us, but famous to the performers and stuff.
Right.
So he went there. Well, he's 6'8", so it's kind of hard not to notice him, but he goes in, he has a drink, and he just kind of hangs out, maybe talks to a couple people. He leaves. Comes back a few days later, and Elaine, the owner, is like, come here. She was very curious. Who is this guy? This is my place. I've owned for decades. I know everybody. Who is this tall guy? And she called him over and, who are you? What's your story? And she took him under her wing and opened so many doors for him. And he ended up winning an Emmy and all these other awards. The doors that she opened for him were amazing. And it was all because he made that conscious decision to go to the place that the people were at that worked in the industry wanted to be in.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us forget that. We go on, whether it's social media or whatever, we just keep doing, and we're not thinking about doing it strategically.
Not at all. It's like, how much can I put out in the world so that the algorithm likes it, so that it's out? Yeah, it's not that little piece of strategy. I'm a firm believer in that. Yes, the strategy behind what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you'll burn yourself out or just spin your wheels. It won't, it's not actually impacting anything.
I mean, if he had gone to, I don't know, some other restaurant that was famous for whatever other kind of people, or mafia, I don't know, whatever. If he had gone to a different restaurant and go there every day and talk to as many people as he could have, still nothing really would have happened, because it wasn't, I kind of look at it as a garden. You have to plant seeds and plant plants where they can grow. The sun, the soil, everything has to be right, the amount of moisture. So we have to consciously pick the places that we go to, whether that is actual physical places or social media or even getting on podcasts or in media.
Yes.
We need to be conscious of who our audience should be.
Right. Well, and being willing to put yourself out there too, like taking that extra look into yourself, and I'm sure this is, going to be part of people's process in reading the book, is just making time to make the effort within yourself to identify what that is for you. Like, I think
to me, I was going to ask you that, so I'm glad you brought it up. That to me is one of the hardest things.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your audience? Who is your perfect audience? If you can pick the exact right person to talk with, who would that be? I think that's really hard for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They don't even know.
It's not necessarily who pays you the most. We've already touched on that. It doesn't have to be that person. It can be that person. It's great when it's that person, but it doesn't mean it has to be that person. It could be somebody that you actually connect with, or, whatever that market is something that you just naturally, as you've built your business, have kind of fallen into. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. Cause it could be the one person that opens all the doors for you. It could be the ace in the hole client, but it could be that awesome connection. But that's a very hard thing for most of us to do because we get so caught up in our work, what we're doing, that we lose track of who would be the best person for us to do it for, the best match for us, and the person that we can help the most.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's what you help your clients with a lot, though, with messaging.
It is. It really is. But I have to think about it for myself too, right? Like I love working with like startup companies or companies that have, creatives, entrepreneurs, those kinds of people who are in it just a little bit, they've gotten their feet wet, and then it's really time for them to hone in on what they're looking to do and share with the world. So it is very near and dear to my heart, is really working on what that messaging looks like. And I take more of like a hard approach, and then we add the strategy to it, because I feel like you have to have those two pieces, because you can't just throw a bunch of words from your heart out into the world, because sometimes it not that it falls short, but it doesn't resonate in the way that it needs to. You know what I mean?
Right. And with the people that you're working with, because of the stage they're at, it's very important to get that heart piece first.
Yes.
And then worry about the strategy, because if they worry about the strategy first, then they're not taking into account the heart, and it comes across totally fake.
Yes, exactly. And that's, just in everything, whether it's, social media, written literature, or just your website, like I believe in that wholeheartedly, is you have to have almost this, like we're talking about storytelling, you have to kind of have the storytelling arc of, the whys and the whats, and I even go down to like the nitty gritty of like, what's the word that resonates with you, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like what's the word you want to put out into the world? Because those are the things that, people pick like words for the year, those kinds of things too. Like words are powerful, but it just depends on what resonates with you, whether it's a smiley poop emoji or it's something else, those kinds of things. It's sticking with me. But those kinds of things, I just think everybody works differently, and helping each other pull that out, I think, is important too.
Yeah. And y'all, we keep saying everybody is different. You have to remember that and cut yourself some slack and really try to get to know yourself. I mean, I know it sounds all corny and mushy-gushy, but it's true. It is. So the third part is about learning to think differently, think more creatively, think bigger. And Rachel, I really feel that I didn't realize this until I was like in my 30s, probably, maybe even 40s, that growing up with my father being blind taught me a different way to think. I didn't know it because I was just used to living that way. But I lived with a person who constantly found a different way to do things. He had a woodworking shop with a lathe, and he never cut himself. And he rode horses, and he played basketball with us, and he shot guns, we did target shooting and stuff. He did things, like changed the tires in the car for my mother, things like that. And most people would think he would have never been able to do it. And to us, we never thought, why is he doing that? Because he just did it.
Yeah.
And I literally never one time in my life ever heard him say he couldn't do something because he was blind. So that's like osmosis. I just absorbed that and didn't even know that I was learning to think differently.
Yeah.
But most people don't have, and this is going to sound weird since he was blind, but most people don't have the luxury of growing up with somebody who has to think differently. So one of the things that I tell people is try every day to ask questions like why and what if.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that forces us to look at things differently.
Yeah.
Kids ask why all the time. My little sister, when we were going to everything my mother said, why? It used to drive her crazy. Why?
Yeah.
Why? And a lot of kids are like that. So as adults, we need to get back into that curiosity mode.
Right.
Why am I doing it like this? Why am I not doing this? Or why are they doing this? Or why is this a problem? And what if something else? Do you have any things like that you have ideas for your clients?
Ooh, I don't know that I have anything quite like that. What I was thinking as you were saying, though, is just like, I'm wondering if it's the employee mentality in us. You know what I mean? That we don't we don't question. I mean, some people do, but a lot of times it's just like the ways, the standards, the processes of things that have been done. And when you're like shifting gears completely into this new world, I just think that's, I don't know. I was just like, hearing you talk about it I think it's a big shift if you've never had to think about it. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. And the thing about the employee mindset is very important. And it's the same thing, whether we're in school or whatever. We're like, this is how we learned. This is what other people are doing. So this is the way it works. And this is what I should do.
Yeah.
Like kind of best practices.
Right.
But a lot of times we don't step back and think, are they really best practices? And even if they are they best practices for me? And what could I do differently that totally disrupts things?
Yes, I agree with that so much.
So that part is about thinking, just learning to think differently, pushing yourself to try to think differently. Then the next part is to actually start doing stuff differently.
That's the hardest part. I mean, you got the mentality, but like the actual, like, now what? Like, okay, I'm like ready, but like, now what?
I mean, whether it's a workout routine or whatever, you're like, yes, I'm going to do this. And you're like, oh, it's just something that I have noticed myself over the years. A lot of times I will spend more time worrying about doing something or dreading doing something or thinking about how I'm going to get started than it actually takes me to do the dang thing once I start.
That is me to a T.
And that's procrastination.
It is. It is. And I will tell you, being a business owner, it has forced me out of that to an extent because deadlines for clients and things like that, you kind of like, at least in my industry, you kind of have to create deadlines. And so that helps me at least get there. But I will take a lot of time to write my pretty to-do list.
That makes you feel like you're being so productive, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that we do, not that your to-do list isn't important and not that making it is wonderful, but a lot of times we spend more time on things like that than we need to because it's kind of scary to go to that next step. You've met Daryl Hatton, the founder of Fundraiser, right? Have you met him?
I can't
remember. You know what? I don't think you have because you weren't able to do the Disrupt Your Now conference.
I know the name, but I don't necessarily know him.
He is awesome, but he talks about the crabs on the beach.
Okay.
And in Mexico, and it's probably other places too, but he was talking specifically about Mexico. So people are on the beach and they catch the crabs and they put them in a pile. They catch one, they just add it to the pile, and the crabs won't leave the pile. Nothing is keeping them there. There's no fence around them. There's no nothing, but they're all like, oh my God, I got to stay with all the other crabs. And I was just like, really? But people are like that. Yeah. We tend to be like, oh my God, I have to do what everybody else is doing. I have to stay in here because it's safe. Yeah. And so, but there are two sides to that. Yeah. The one that doesn't want to leave because you're afraid and I got to be safe. but then the ones that are in the pile wanting to pull you back.
Yes.
And there's usually two reasons for that. Some people are genuinely afraid, loved ones or whatever. They want to protect you. They want to make sure that you'll be okay, that you'll be safe. They don't want you to take risks that might hurt you. But there's also that thing of, what if you leave them behind? What if you're successful and they get left behind? And, the classic example of that is somebody who goes on a diet and a friend or boyfriend sabotages it because they're afraid that they'll look too good, I mean, and friends do that all the time. You're like, hey, if I'm going out with them, I don't want them to look better than me. So that's like the crabs on the beach.
And that goes back into what you're talking about, like hiring a coach, surrounding yourself with people that'll pull you up, it just
exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
But I thought that when he told me that, that's one of the things that I remember a lot in my head. I'm like, I got to make sure I'm not being a crab on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that brings us to the last one, which is purpose, having a heart-led business. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I don't mean mushy-gushy, because a lot of people are like that. They just think it's like new age sounding. I don't mean like that, but I mean, you always hear nobody on their deathbed goes, I wish I'd worked harder. And you want to think, how can you make a difference in people's lives? How can you leave people better off than they would have been without you? And it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be at all. But one way that Daryl put it to me, he said, an easy way to think about it is think like right now, if you were to kick the bucket, how many people would be at your funeral? How many people really would care that you're gone? And if you're only thinking about money, well, you're gone, so they don't care anymore. Your family will be there and your loved ones. But if you have really made a difference in people's lives, it doesn't have to be money. It can be anything. But if you have made a difference in people's lives, then you are enriching them. Even if it's not money, you're enriching them, and that comes back to you. It just makes, at the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier, there's always more money to be made.
Right.
But at what point is it enough? So, in there we talk about the NASCAR team so for y'all that don't know Rachel, her brother Colin is a NASCAR driver, and he races to combat veteran suicide. So he promotes these free services pro bono, and I work with the team pro bono because my husband is retired Navy, and my grandfather killed himself, and my grandmother tried to when I was a little bitty girl. So those are things that are very close to my heart.
Right.
And Colins, y'all's older brothers, are active duty. But Sean, the guy that was in prison, his thing is he helps kids. He's like a mentor to kids so that they don't get on the wrong track. But he also is a mentor to people who are currently incarcerated or people who have been, to help them, start a business or whatever it is they want to do.
I think it's powerful when you use those things, like don't just pull a purpose out of the air, like maybe there is a mission or something like that might resonate with you. But when you have that piece of something that like you could talk about for an hour, you could, whatever it is, like it's something that you get excited about doing in addition or as part of your business. I think that those are the things that, not that, I don't know. I mean, I think of like, I'm trying to think of like Tom's or whatever, like one for one, buy a pair of shoes, give a pair of shoes. Those
I mean, that was a great example.
Yeah.
People go, oh, it's just a pair of shoes, but think about it. Kids all over the world that wouldn't have a pair of shoes. I can tell you, my father grew up in poverty, and he had to go to school for deaf and blind. And my sister went up there after he passed away and was like looking through records. I mean, I'm talking like from the 30s or to early 40s, ran across a letter that his mother had written that he could not come to school in the fall because he didn't have a pair of shoes.
Wow.
And they sent him a pair of shoes so that he could come. But so, you might think, people in Africa or people wherever, there are people that you can help all over. And it doesn't have to be money. But you raise a very important point, Rachel. Don't just pull something out of the air.
Yeah. What's the thing that you're going to be able to really speak to or really be a part of? Yeah. Or have be a part of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you just pull it out of the air, it's in a selfish manner, it's not going to help you. You are not going to feel fulfilled.
Right.
But it's also going to be so inauthentic. Everybody's going to know you're just doing it to make yourself look good.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that Colin, I know, was very worried about, that people would think he was just promoting veterans causes because he wanted, to look good. But that's not true. He's doing it because he knows that could be his brothers out there.
Exactly.
And that's not the only reason, but you know what I'm saying. There has to be authenticity. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Emily Mishler, who is in the book, I love, and other people may have said this, but I hadn't heard it before. She said, find a way to connect the business mind to the servant's heart.
Ooh.
Or the business brain to the servant's heart. And I actually now, Rachel, I believe it's more important than ever, even from the business side, because people are more likely to do business with a company that supports causes that are important to them. So if you want to be totally selfish about it, there is a business reason to do it. But we're not encouraging you to do it for that reason. We're encouraging you to do it for the right reason.
Exactly. It's more sustainable, you get through that kind of thing too. You're 20 years in, 18 years in, whatever it is, you get to that point, you're asking yourself the hard questions of the whys, is that going to still be part of your why,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been working on for the past few months.
And you said summer, right?
Yeah, this summer, actually. I was supposed to be out by now. But, in my defense, it did keep growing and growing and changing. But now that I'm focused in and know what I'm doing, and I mean, I have now for a couple months. But, I'm making real progress. And I'm really excited because I feel like it's helped me writing it. It's helped me focus again. And I have learned so many things from the people that I've interviewed to be in the book. But I'm really excited because I feel like it's something that will really help people.
I think it will too, Lisa. I'm so excited to get a copy. I cannot wait.
Well, I hope it will. And I'm excited that you're going to be in there because I feel like for people to be able to see somebody as young as you are, a millennial, right?
Yeah.
And you just started your business during COVID, but you have great lessons for people of all ages to learn. And that's the thing. A lot of times we think, oh, somebody that's older can't learn from somebody that's younger, or if you're in a different business, you can't. But when you take a step back and you look at these life experiences, they transfer between industries and age groups and everything.
People are people, people and people's stories. People are people, and identifying with someone in your same lane or same whatever walk of life is amazing. But also, just as we talked about at the beginning of this, just perspective. I think perspective is everything when you're going into business too. I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time to
it's been fun.
Talk with me about it tonight. And I know we usually have a guest on, y'all, and Rachel and I have just been so busy. I was like, oh my God, we haven't yet. The person that was going to be on had to reschedule. And all of a sudden I turned around. I was like, crap, I don't have a guest. I was like, we'll just talk about it. We haven't talked about it yet.
Awesome. Yes, I'm glad. And I'm glad we introduced it like this. So that way people can get excited, when you actually launch it. I know you'll have a bunch more stuff, advertising it, but it's.
Yeah. And I'll be doing shows with some of the people that are in the book, and some courses, some free courses, some paid things. So I'm going to have a lot of different things around it. And like I said, it's basically going to be like a living book because I'm going to constantly add on to it through the website because I don't want it to be, there are so many people out there that we can all learn from. And I don't want it to just stop once the book is printed.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I'm so excited.
So thanks for joining us, y'all. Rachel, thanks for talking with me about it. And I will get you a link to the draft so that you can give me your feedback, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks. And everybody, I'll see y'all Thursday evening at 7 for my Adaptable Entrepreneurs Show. Bye. Bye.
Bye.